This is an art collage novel video. I made this series so you guys can experience the story faster. The video will focus on the character's psychology, the images are for illustration purposes only. The yellow-robed old man was taken aback, and his face was filled with shock. When he saw Yunxiao, he looked as if he had seen a ghost as he screamed, "Who the hell are you? How did you recognize me? You even know about my Starlight soul body." Yunxiao suppressed the shock in his heart and began to calculate quickly in his mind. This Yuan Gohan's background wasn't small, he was a great figure with a heaven-shaking background. He was an elder of the soul formation realm and held a certain position in the holy region. Even a few of the 7 superpowers had hired him as an honorary elder. The so-called honorary elder was just a title. Every year, they would receive a large amount of benefits for free. At critical moments, they would move their lips or give 1 or 2 pointers. In his previous life, Yunxiao was also an honorary elder of the Sea of Soul Formation for the convenience of many things, so he and Yuan Gohan could be considered old acquaintances. Moreover, these were not Yuan Gohan's greatest trump cards, which even Yunxiao did not dare to provoke in his previous life. It's indeed a Starlight soul body. Yunxiao quickly came up with a plan. His eyes rolled evilly, and a smile appeared on his face as he snorted coldly, "I naturally know you're Yuan Gohan. Otherwise, I wouldn't have come all the way here to look for you." "What? You're here for me? What do you want from me?" Yuan Gohan's shock came wave after wave, and his heart was filled with uneasiness. Although the other party seemed to only have the cultivation of a 4-star martial grandmaster, how could such a weak strength come to the outer realm's starry sky? "What do I need you for?" Yunxiao's laughter made Yuan Gohan's hair stand on end, and he said with a scowl, "Of course it's because of your Starlight soul refining technique, Mr. Yuan Gohan, a 9th-tier alchemist master." Starlight soul refining technique. How dare you? Even Yuan Gohan, who was extremely afraid of him, was furious when he heard this request. His face instantly turned cold and he shouted, "I don't care who you are, get out of my sight now. It's impossible for you to obtain my soul refining technique. It's not too late for you to leave now. If I find out who you are, you'll be in trouble." With an angry look on his face, the temperament of a 9th-tier alchemist grandmaster was exuded from him, and he had a calm composure in the face of danger. He continued, "Since you know me, you should know where this Starlight soul refining technique is from. Who in the world would dare to do such a thing?" Yunxiao smiled contemptuously and said in a cold voice, "I'm aware of your background, but since I've come all the way here, I'm naturally prepared. Do you treasure your soul cultivation technique or your Starlight soul body?" His ring glowed, and a long streamer appeared in his hand. He spun it a few times and said with a cold smile, "Do you recognize this?" This time, Yuan Gohan was really scared out of his wits, and he screamed, "Soul-devouring banner?" And it was a 9th-grade soul-devouring banner. "You're from the Soul Eater clan." Yunxiao laughed in his heart, but he still put on a ferocious look and said coldly, "It's good that you know. I'll give you 3 breaths to make your choice." He was also very nervous, and the palm of his hand holding the soul-devouring banner was covered in sweat. At this moment, the Yuan Gohan in front of him was not Yuan Gohan himself, but an avatar. It was a supreme soul refining technique that was purely composed of souls. By absorbing the power of the stars, one could condense their second soul and achieve dual cultivation, which was equivalent to 2 alchemists cultivating at the same time. The effect was conceivable. This Starlight soul tampering technique was known as the #1 soul tampering technique on the continent. And now, this so-called 8th-tier Starlight soul was equivalent to the soul form of an 8th-tier alchemist. Even if Yunxiao were to fight, he would never be a match for Yuan Gohan's Starlight soul. His current strategy was to scare the other party with the soul-devouring banner. After all souls were most afraid of the soul-devouring clan, especially some senior alchemists, whose souls were so powerful that even the experts of the soul-devouring clan drooled with desire. As expected. After Yuan Gohan saw the soul-devouring banner, he couldn't remain calm. His body trembled under the starlight and he almost roared, "Even Wang Fu Bai would not dare to treat me like this." If you dare to take my Starlight soul body, I'll turn your Soul Devourer clan into ashes even if you're one of the 7 superpowers. You. Yunxiao's face was full of sarcasm as he waved his hand impatiently and said, "Don't talk nonsense. If I take this Starlight soul body of yours, it'll be a difficult problem for you to maintain your true body at the 9th rank, and if you fall back to the 8th rank, how much influence do you think you'll have? Why would the Beiming Dark Palace hire you as an honorary elder?" He poured his vital chi into the soul-devouring flag, and a strange power overflowed from it, emitting a faint golden light. He said coldly, "Hurry up and choose. After taking your soul, my soul-devouring banner might be able to advance to the Earth Gold rank." "I'm looking forward to it." Yunxiao licked his lips ferociously, which made Yuan Gohan's heart tremble with fear. He felt a chill all over his body, and his eyes were filled with hatred. Yuan Gaohan gritted his teeth and said, "You know my identity, yet you still dare to treat me like this. You really deserve to die." Yunxiao's face darkened as he took a few steps forward with the soul-devouring flag in his hand. A cold aura emanated from his body, as if it were tangible. "This is your last chance. Are you going to give me the soul cultivation technique or just give me this soul body? After 3 breaths, I'll directly take back the soul." 1. Yunxiao enunciated the word 1 long and hard, pressing Yuan Gohan's heart like a huge rock weighing 10,000 kilograms. His face grew uglier and uglier, almost twisted into a hideous mess. 2. As the word 2 was shouted, Yuan Gohan's body trembled. He raised his head, his eyes filled with resentment, and gritted his teeth. "How would I know that you wouldn't take my 8th level Starlight soul body after I taught you the soul refining technique? You're cultivating the soul-devouring banner, so my soul should be more attractive to you, right?" Yunxiao was overjoyed. It was obvious that the other party had compromised. If Yuan Gohan's Starlight soul body made a move, he could suppress Yunxiao with his strength as an 8th-tier alchemist. However, when he saw the 9th-rank soul-devouring banner, he was already terrified and couldn't even have the slightest bit of battle intent. Although the strength that the other party had revealed was very weak, without powerful means, how could he have entered the outer space, how could he have possessed the 9th-grade soul-devouring flag, and how could he have recognized him? If this soul was taken away and refined into a soul slave, or even worse, turned into a nourishment for the soul slave, Yuan Gohan's body would definitely be badly wounded. Just as Yunxiao had said, it was unknown whether he could even maintain his 9th-tier cultivation. Furthermore, it would be impossible for him to recover his current strength or even advance to the next level. The consequences were too severe, and he did not dare to take the risk. How could anyone enter the outer realm's starry sky? He was filled with hatred. If he had known this earlier, he would have easily found a few martial supremes to protect him. He would not have to suffer such humiliation. However, it was too late. Who would want to destroy their many years of cultivation so easily? Yunxiao suppressed the boundless joy in his heart and snorted coldly. "You don't have to worry about that. I, Zhang Shaotian, always keep my word. If I take your cultivation method, I'll at most create some grudges, but if I take your soul body, it'll be a life and death feud. You should always leave a way out for yourself. Otherwise, if you go to the Soul Devourer clan with your original body and cause trouble, I won't be able to explain it to the sect master." Humph. Yuan Gaohan snorted heavily, his face turning purple from anger as he angrily said, "So you know the severity of this. However, my soul cultivation technique is unparalleled. Your sister, you're still so long-winded." 3. Yunxiao's face immediately darkened when he saw that the man was going to waste more time. He shouted a 3 and made the soul-devouring banner in his hand look like it was about to spread. After Zhang Shaotian was killed by Yi Nantian, the soul-devouring banner had fallen into Yunxiao's hands. Although it wasn't of much use usually, but it was after all a quasi-9th tier profound armament, so it would be good to sell it. Who would have thought that it would play such a big role at this time? Yuan Gohan's Starlight soul body was most afraid of the Soul Devourer race's perverted cultivation techniques. If not for that, even if the person in front of him was a martial venerable, he would still dare to fight with his 8th tier Starlight soul body. But when this ninth-grade soul-devouring banner was taken out, Yuan Gaohan was scared silly on the spot. Where would he find the courage to fight? Don't accept me. Yuan Gaohan was so frightened that he no longer had any grace and quickly retreated, hurriedly begging for mercy. I'll teach you the Starlight soul refining technique. Stop. He was really scared out of his wits. His soul power had regressed by 1 level, which was unbearable for any alchemist, not to mention a man who was already standing at the peak of alchemy. He would rather die than do that. Yuan Gaohan compromised in an instant, his face filled with pain. Then, he stared at Yunxiao expressionlessly, trying to remember this face so that when he returned, he could issue an order to hunt this man down to the ends of the earth. Yunxiao knew what he was thinking, but he did not care. It wasn't the first time he had been hunted down, so he was already a wily old fox. The husband's soul is pure and without impurities. It is called true. The heavens obtain one with the sun, moon, and stars, and the earth obtain one with the clouds. Yuan Gaohan was forced into an extremely helpless situation and began to teach the essence of the Starlight soul refining technique, deliberately making some of the key points difficult to understand. But, Yunxiao did not look puzzled as he had expected. He only frowned slightly in some places, but his brows would soon relax, as if he had completely absorbed it. Yuan Gaohan was stunned for a moment, but then he sneered in his heart. The Starlight soul refining technique was a first-class godly technique. Even when he was learning it in the past, it took him a lot of effort to fully understand it. Many key points were only fully grasped after continuous practice in the future. Judging from Yunxiao's expression, he was planning to forcibly memorize it first and then slowly figure it out in the future. However, such a divine technique was not something that ordinary alchemists could figure out at all. This was because the essence itself contained endless laws. Even if he remembered it now, it would gradually dissipate in his mind over time. He could see through Yunxiao's soul power cultivation base at a glance. It was only at the 6th tier, and it would take him at most 3 days to forget the Starlight soul tampering technique. He laughed coldly in his heart, and even felt a little proud. He really wanted to see what kind of expression the other party would have when he realized that all the tips had disappeared from his mind in a few days. However, even if the other party forgets about it, I must hunt him down to the ends of the earth. The dignity of a 9th-tier alchemist could not be violated. He would definitely make the other party pay 100 times the price. After the time it took to finish a cup of tea, Yuan Gaohan finally finished his story and looked at Yunxiao coldly, his eyes filled with undisguised contempt. Yunxiao turned a blind eye to his expression. Instead, he frowned and began to think hard, as if there were many things he could not understand. The two of them just sat there quietly, looking at each other. After a long time, Yuan Gaohan finally couldn't bear it anymore and stood up, saying in a deep voice, "I've finished explaining the entire chapter. Can I leave now?" He was afraid that Yunxiao would begin to forget it now and find out the situation. That would be terrible, and he would definitely be forced to repeat it a few more times, or even record it in other ways. And many powerful cultivation techniques could not exist in the world. They could not be recorded in the language they used and could only be passed down by word of mouth. Once they were recorded in words, they would immediately be destroyed in the world. Unless they used the mysterious tadpole writing that contained rules, but few people in the entire realm of heavenly martial arts could recognize those writing styles. Furthermore, when Yuan Gaohan had learned the Starlight soul refining technique, he had heard that this heaven-defying soul refining technique had been converted from that mysterious tadpole-like text. "Wait," Yunxiao said. Yuan Gaohan's expression changed and he angrily said, "What else do you want? Are you going to break your promise?" His vigilance immediately rose to the extreme. Could it be that the other party wanted to take his soul body after deceiving him of his cultivation technique? If that was the case, he would not let the other party succeed even if he had to be turned into ashes. Yunxiao found his look funny and said, "Don't be nervous. I just don't understand a few things, and I want you to explain them to me." "Humph." Yuan Gaohan snorted coldly, "You only have 6th rank soul power, so it's normal that you don't understand. I've already explained it in detail." Yunxiao said with a wry smile, "But there are 3 things that I still have some doubts about. For example, the sentence, "The most serene is unable to observe, but the light is bright, and the most tranquil is able to appreciate things in a good way," seems to contain three meanings. I wonder what you think, Master Yuan. Yuan Gohan's heart trembled violently, his eyes almost popping out as he said in horror, You can actually understand its true meaning? I don't understand, Yunxiao said. That's why I asked for advice. There are two other places. Yunxiao pointed out the three most difficult and ambiguous points and asked for advice very sincerely. Yuan Gaohan was completely dumbfounded. To be able to point out these 3 points and explain the root of the doubt, it completely proved that the other party understood. Not only did he understand, but he also understood it extremely thoroughly. There was also the Wufu. In these 3 places, he had never understood Wufu. Yuan Gaohan wiped the cold sweat off his forehead out of habit, but he was a spirit body, so how could there be beads of sweat? For a moment, he was stunned and didn't know what to say. What Yunxiao said next shocked him so much that his heart almost jumped out of his chest. This Starlight soul tampering technique should have been translated from the Golden Tadpole text, right? That's why there are so many parts that can't be expressed or have ambiguous meanings. However, to be able to translate those words containing the laws into oral esoteric rules, that person's cultivation is indeed shocking. There was admiration in Yunxiao's eyes. Obviously, he respected the translator very much. You are. After Yuan Gaohan said the word "you" 3 times in a row, he didn't know what to say at all. His mind was short-circuited. When he first learned this Starlight soul refining technique, it took him 5 years to master it, but when he found that these 3 places were ambiguous, it took him 10 years, and the other party was stunned. Tell me what you think. Let's study it together. If you can figure it out, you might be able to attain the 9th tier Starlight soul body very soon. Yunxiao narrowed his eyes and smiled. You've been immersed in it for so many years. You must have found your own way to explain the 3 problems. Otherwise, you would never have been able to cultivate your Starlight soul body to the 8th level. Yuan Gaohan licked his dry lips and felt that his throat was stuck, unable to speak at all. A teenager actually said that he wanted to study the Starlight soul refining technique with him. Are you an alchemist? The best alchemist of the soul devourer race should be Han Yinshan. I know him, but I don't think he's as talented as you. Are you his disciple? Yuan Gohan's throat was stuck for a while before he slowly calmed down and asked tentatively. He thought of one possibility, which was that the other party must have had a certain understanding of the Starlight soul refining technique, and must have a 9th tier great alchemist behind him. The more he thought about it, the more likely it was. Otherwise, with just a little kid like him, not to mention understanding the Starlight soul tampering technique, it would be impossible for him to even reach the outer realm's starry sky. With that thought in mind, all his doubts were suddenly cleared up. Moreover, there were only a few people in the Soul Devourer clan who had such an alchemy cultivation base, and the most suspicious one among them was Han Yinshan, the number 1 alchemist of the Soul Devourer clan. Yunxiao sneered in his heart. Yuan Gaohan was clearly trying to get information out of him, and his method was so childish. These alchemists spent all their time refining and did not understand the ways of the world at all. It's none of your business. One more word and I'll take you in. He picked up the soul-devouring banner and waved it. Yuan Gohan's face flashed with fear and he retreated a few steps, his expression becoming gloomy. The more he looked at him, the more he felt that Han Yinshan was the one behind this young man. His heart was filled with boundless anger as he gritted his teeth and said, Han Yinshan, how dare you spy on my Starlight soul tampering technique? It seems like you've already planned this all along. I'll definitely not let you off when I return. Yunxiao did not know what he was thinking, but he urged him, hurry up and tell me. If you're not satisfied with the explanation, don't blame me for not being able to control the soul-devouring flag in my hand and releasing it on its own. The golden soul slave inside hasn't tasted a fresh soul for a long time. Yuan Gaohan gritted his teeth in hatred, but at the same time, he also relaxed, knowing that the other party wouldn't really take him. After all, Han Yinshan was only seeking the essence of the divine art. When the two met, they could deny it and argue with each other. This was also the reason why he had specially sent this young man up. He could even hand this young man over directly and cut all ties with him. However, if he were to take in this Starlight soul body, the nature would be completely different. It would definitely be a situation where he would not rest until he died. At that time, he wouldn't care if he admitted it or not, he would fight to the death. After thinking this through, he felt that he was at least safe. As long as he cooperated obediently, the other party would not do anything extreme. Thus, under the extremely resentful gaze, Yuan Gaohan explained his understanding of those doubts one by one. After knowing that the person behind the other party was Han Yinshan, he no longer had the intention of deliberately hiding it. After all, Han Yinshan's existence was not inferior to his, so he could tell whether there was a problem with just one word. Yunxiao's eyes were filled with surprise, and he could not help but cheer. A moment later, he looked completely satisfied. Obviously, he had mastered the whole chapter. I really couldn't tell, Master Yuan. I used to think that you were an idiot who only managed to cultivate to the 9th step by relying on a heaven-defying cultivation technique. Now it seems that you do have some comprehension ability. At least these few parts of your explanation were very interesting. Yunxiao laughed and clapped his hands, but no one knew if he was praising or mocking him. Yuan Gaohan was so angry that smoke was rising from his head, and this debt was firmly placed on Han Yinshan. How could a young brat have such an opinion of him? Han Yinshan must have mentioned it frequently, and this brat must have heard it, so he said it out loud. Can I leave now? Yuan Gaohan couldn't wait to return to his main body immediately and gather his men to rush to the Soul Devourer sect to kill. His 8th level soul body was too far away from his main body, so his main body couldn't sense anything that was happening. Unless this soul body died, his main body could only receive all the information from the soul body at the moment of death. This was also the reason why Yuan Gaohan was worried that Han Yinshan wouldn't dare to kill him. The pitiful Han Yinshan had inexplicably created a huge problem. Yes, let's wait a little longer. Yunxiao smiled and looked around. Yuan Gaohan suddenly became furious. In the future, if the other party went back on his words, he trembled with anger. You're really good. I'm going to kill my way to the Soul Devourer sect and kill all of you. Yunxiao rolled his eyes at him and said with a sneer, don't get too excited, I'll let you go. I just have some other questions to ask. How long have you been cultivating in the outer realm? How did you come from the continent? Yuan Gaohan looked at Yunxiao's clear eyes and saw that he was not lying to him. He was a soul, so he was the most sensitive to emotions and auras. Only then did he breathe a sigh of relief and say, in the holy region, there's a domain teleporting formation that leads directly to the outer realm. This soul of mine is no different from my main body. It was directly transported here, and I've been cultivating for another 10 years. A direct teleportation? 10 years. Yunxiao was surprised. No wonder. No wonder your soul has reached the 8th realm. You're not far from the 9th realm, are you? At that time, you'll be able to reach the peak of the Tao of magic. At the same time, he started to worry. He had never thought that a saint could be directly teleported here. Yuan Gaohan was startled. It seemed that Han Yinshan was very familiar with the Starlight soul body. At the same time, when he thought of how he had been bullied by Han Yinshan's disciple, he was so angry that his whole body trembled. He secretly swore in his heart that he would definitely get back at Han Yinshan. Yunxiao chuckled and continued to ask, then you must be very familiar with this area. I want to know where the ancient astral winds are? What? Why are you asking this? Yuan Gaohan's expression changed, a look of fear flashing across his face.